What's going on, YouTube fam? It's your boy Angus Beef here. Thank you so much for stopping by to click on this video. Really appreciate it. And obviously in doing so, this shows that you're interested in some way, shape or form around the big trending topic that is intermittent fasting. It's something that's trending hard at the moment. And even if we do, like just jumping onto old mate Google Trends at the moment, which is what I do to search for what's trending at the moment and making sure my content that I post is on point and relevant and stuff to whatever people want to learn about, you'll see here that it hit its all-time high in, there you go. So right at the start of this year in 2019, it's hit its all-time high and it's remained fairly solid ever since in terms of its interest. And if we scroll down here, you can see that holy shit is it having some Australia, all different parts of America and stuff like that seems to be where it's trending most. Even old mate South Africa has got some people that are keen to make the intermittent fasting gains. You can see here that related things, we've got George Cruz intermittent fasting, free intermittent fasting plan, best intermittent fasting schedule, all this other stuff. So it's on the rise massively, which is crazy, right? So in this video today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be breaking it down into three key parts, all right? Part one being the science behind how intermittent fasting works so that you can understand it from an OBS point of view and basically just, hear the truth around how it works, how it gets results for people, and see it for what it is. Part two will be why some people won't be able to lose weight from doing it and just you understanding how that actually looks like. But then also part three being should you do it and build your lifestyle around it. So I've got lots of sick knowledge bombs and content planned for you. Please do me a favor, if you're a returning subscriber, make sure that you give this video a like, and would love to hear your thoughts on intermittent fasting in the comment section below. If you are new to the channel, strap yourself in for some Rick Sanchez knowledge bombs. I'm really excited to help you in your journey through the content we're going to uncover. And obviously if you love this content and you love what I'm about, feel free to check out some of the other videos in the upload section, and you should definitely think about subscribing. Time for some knowledge bombs. Let's get stuck into it. So part one, fam, it's time to look at some science. So understand that from a macro point of view, intermittent fasting is basically making specific tweaks to, the schedule as to which you are fasting throughout your day in relation to your standard feasting time, right? So for the standard person who, is an average Joe or an average Jane, cruising along in life, trying to live their hashtag best life and be healthy and stuff like that, right? For the average person, what their typical scenario looks like, and we're going to use the iPad for this, so for those of you who are visual learners, you can take on board this easy. So for the average person, right, what their scenario typically looks like, right, is that let's say this is their whole day as a whole. So we're going to start over here, right? So what typically will happen, right, is that, there we go. So what will typically happen is that upon waking, they will start eating, right? Come on, go straight, you fucker. Whoop. Upon waking, what will happen is that they will be having their breakfast, right? And then maybe some morning snack, and then maybe, let's say for example, some lunch, some afternoon feed, and dinner, right? So in other words, between when you wake and when you go to sleep, you're eating. So let's say that represents this big red section here. Let's say that represents feasting, right? So for the standard person, this is their scenario, right? So they're feasting for the bulk of their day. And in terms of when they actually are fasting, the only time that they're really fasting is kind of like, when they are asleep, right? So we'll put here feasting, and this is when they're fasting. So for the standard person, what that looks like, if we zoom in over here, right, is that they have, say for example, let's say that you start eating at about maybe 8 o'clock in terms of your breakfast, right? And you have those meals and snacks throughout the day. So you've got 8 a.m., start eating, and then what will typically happen is that we go through the day, you're eating, and you maybe, say you have your last meal, so you have a feed and then you have some dessert. So you stop eating, right? Let's say at approx, maybe you stop eating at about 9 p.m. That's usually an average time I find it for most people. So if you do the math there, that means that you've got 4 hours in the morning where you're eating, and then you've got 9 hours in the afternoon / evening when you're eating. So that means you've got 13 hours feasting. And then what that means is that because there's 24 hours in a day, you've got 7 hours plus 4. That means you've got 11 hours fasted, right? Now, what will happen there, right, is that in terms of, well, if someone is having an eating schedule like that, right, provided that you are in a calorie deficit. So what I mean by that is that you are eating anywhere between, let's say, 10 to maybe 30% below the calories that your body requires to maintain your current weight, right? Provided that you're in that calorie deficit, it doesn't really matter too much if this is the scenario for you in terms of your feasting and your fasting schedule. But now, let's say for example, we're going to get rid of all this, we're going to wipe it, and now what we're going to look at is, well, what you would be doing if you were actually embracing the intermittent fasting schedule, right? So typically what happens with the intermittent fasting schedule is that obviously it's different for people based on when their wake and sleep cycle is, right? And then we'll get rid of this, right? So essentially what you're doing is it's kind of everything in reverse. So what's happening here, right, is that this big red section now, which once was the standard person's feasting window, this is now your fasting window, right? And then what's happening is that you've actually reduced the amount of time that you're actually spending in a feeding state, right? So we're going to break this down into statistics. So it's as if you've, pretty much just reversed things. So that was your fasting period, and now what's actually happening here is that you've actually got a smaller window of feasting, right? So let's look at what that looks like. So let's say, for example, that you are not a shift worker or whatever, and meaning you don't have crazy hectic rotating shift work hours and that sort of thing. So let's say that you might work a day job, so you might work 8 till 4 or 9 till 5 or 7 till 3 or whatever it may be, right? So if this is the case, what's actually happening is that you're pushing back the time at which you start eating. So the normal person has their breakfast, right? In your scenario, what might happen is that your first meal, right, you might push back until, so is at lunchtime, right? So that might be, let's say 1 p.m., right? 1 or 2 p.m. So what that then means is that you've got your first meal, and then, like the good scenario here is that I'd say that you've got, a fat loss deficit target of 2,000 calories, right? Rather than spreading that out across the whole entire day and trying to keep yourself full, right? You've now spreading 2,000 calories between 1 p.m. and let's say that your last meal is at 8 p.m., right? You've got 2,000 calories to spread across, 7 hours, right? So this is where for some people, if you can handle a shift in schedule like that, it can be massively beneficial to allow you to adhere to your overall calorie deficit and macronutrient targets, right? So that's essentially what you're doing. So it's like your first meal is pushed back till later in the day. You're having your last meal at a similar time, and if you do the math there, that means that in this case scenario, so you've got your first meal at 1 p.m, last meal at 8 p.m, so that's 7 hours of feasting. And that means that in that sort of case, you will then have, if we do the math there, that means that you've got 17 hours fasted, right? 17 hours fasted, right? Bazinga. Now, depending on someone's experience in the fasting and intermittent fasting game, you can actually extend that. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, that you could be aiming for like an 18-hour fast, right? Meaning that you say, for example, if that was the case, you would maybe start eating at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you would finish eating by 8 p.m. And then you might even progress your way all the way up to the OMAD, meaning 1 meal a day squad, right? Now, understand that once again, just to reiterate, right? There isn't any black magic or special sort of unicorn shit going on here when it comes to intermittent fasting. The reason why it works is that it allows you to tweak and have greater control over, I guess, how your meal frequency works. In terms of, for some people, right, they think that you need to have 1 million small meals a day and that they need to all be small, right? Whereas in this sort of case, you have control up your sleeve to be able to have, say, for example, like a few really big meals or 2 massive meals, or you can fast all day and have 1 fucking massive meal at Sizzler and smash, or you can eat and hit all your calories in 1 hit, right? So it's like, that's the benefit as to, well, how fasting works. And it's something that I guess like you got to be careful in terms of your food personality, in terms of gauging as to whether it's going to be effective for you or not. And what I mean by that is, let's say for example that you're someone who nails your fasting period and you don't start eating until 2 o'clock, but then you have zero appetite control and you smash a big lunch, and then you proceed to go and smash a whole heap of like a bag of M&Ms, and then you might go for a walk and whatever, because like you've just become aware that you've eaten a lot of calories. But then tea comes along, you're still hungry, you have a huge feed there, and then you have like an evening snack and that sort of stuff, and it's like, well, yeah, you've nailed your fast and you're eating a lot of food in a small time window, but the thing is that if you haven't got wraps as to the whole understanding of thermodynamics, aka energy in versus energy out, well then the thing is that intermittent fasting won't work for you, right? So we're going to uncover more of that in part 3 in terms of why some people won't lose weight doing it, right? But it's like, it can be a great strategy for when you're like, let's say that you've been invited out for a feed later on tonight, and you want to make sure that you can get a nice solid burger and have some chips, and or it might even be that you're fasting so that you can have a big pizza. Like, yeah, you can do that, because, well, by you fasting in the morning, it means that, and even into lunchtime, and not having anything until the arvo or whatever, right? What that is then doing is it's allowing you to be able to, hit your overall intake of calories in a one sitting, or in 1 or 2 little sittings, right? And like, if you can handle hunger, awesome, right? But be aware that there's nothing magical about playing around with your meal schedule like this. It's like, overall energy in versus energy out is what's going to control how you look, right? In terms of nailing the deficit, that's what's going to cause you to lose body fat, and if you've nailed it properly, you won't lose any muscle while doing so. But in saying that, just be aware that, like, if you can't handle hunger very well, you're going to feel like shit while you are doing intermittent fasting. So if I were you, ease your way into it in terms of your fasting in relation to feasting window, and build your way up. Because like, it took me a little bit of adjusting to get used to it. It's something that I do from time to time if I'm trying to adhere to a deficit for the day, or if I know that I'm going to an all-you-can-eat joint for tea at night time, I might fast most of the day or only just have fruit, so that way I can use the bulk of my calories at night time. This is a strategy that I will utilize with some clients based on their experience, but depending on their food personality, in terms of what I've gauged about them, a lot of people I won't actually recommend it because of But then in saying that also, just be aware that if you're someone who is a flexible dieter and you've got a bit of experience in the game and that sort of thing, understand that, you don't want to be fasting all day in favor of having like a massive Macca's or Hungry Jack's feed at night time, and specifically going out of your way to eat like that in favor of just hitting calories and having some YOLO food. Because if you do that too often, you will find that you will feel like shit, you will get bloated, you'll probably start getting inflamed because of the fact that you've got such a shit intake of fiber and micronutrients, right? So understand that, like, health should be pinnacle priority in terms of making sure that you're getting in baseline fiber, micronutrients and stuff like that. And then obviously once you've got that covered, utilizing things like intermittent fasting, if you enjoy having an increased fasting window, it can be a great asset to you. So that's how it works. Now we're going to get stuck into why some people won't lose weight while doing it. Welcome to part 2. So now that you understand the science, or the basics of the science behind how it works in terms of adjusting your meal frequency, in terms of adjusting the fasting in relation to feasting window, right? There's no magic powers behind it or any sort of sorcery going on. It's just like, it works because it puts you in a calorie deficit and you're reducing your feasting window to make managing your calories more easier, right? So now we're going to look into why some people won't lose weight doing it. So there's some interesting scenarios that I've found in terms of my almost decade of coaching people to look great naked and to get strong as fuck and just love themselves and achieve true life transformation, rather than just fucking losing weight and then that being it, right? And what's interesting is that for a lot of people, right, they can be doing things like intermittent fasting because they saw that it was sick and they saw that it was something that can lose weight and whatever on Google, right? But then when it came to the application of it into their lifestyle, they found it very difficult to stick to, and therefore very difficult to lose weight adhering to it, right? So some mistakes that I find that people make that complement or contribute to them not losing weight from doing intermittent fasting are a few key things. First one being is that they try to jump straight to a massive fasting window when they're used to eating meals spread throughout their entire day. As I said in the last part, right, you want to kind of ease your way into it. Another mistake that I find people make that contribute to them not being able to lose weight is that their biomarkers are absolutely shithouse and all over the shop, and they haven't got that sorted before jumping into intermittent fasting. And if you're not aware of what your biomarkers are, they're basically kind of like, well, the main sort of things that complement to you having overall awesome health. And some examples of this are, well, are you sleeping enough? Do you manage your stress? Do you drink enough water? Are you moving daily in terms of non-exercise activity thermogenesis and getting insufficient steps? Are you stretching daily to ensure that you're not storing tension? Are you getting in enough baseline fiber and plants from legumes, root vegetables, and fruits? Like these little things, right? And for a lot of people, if you're not kind of on point with those things, if you jump straight into a deficit and fucking around with things like intermittent fasting, well, then all you're kind of doing there is digging yourself deeper into a hole of just fuckery, basically, and you won't give your body any reason to lose fat. It's kind of like you need to earn the right to give your body a reason to lose fat, and that right is by looking after it properly in terms of mastering your health, getting that shit sorted before going into a deficit. Not thinking that by going into a deficit that it's going to make you healthier, or that by going into massive fasting schedule in terms of food, that's going to make you healthier. You see what I mean? So it's like health first, then consider things like intermittent fasting to achieve a calorie deficit. So that can be a big reason that fucks up people in terms of them not losing weight, simply because, well, yeah, like if your body's not healthy, understand that it will perceive any of your calorie deficit efforts as stress, as perceived threat, and then won't follow along, right? So it's like get healthy first, then shift into these things, right? And then another key reason is that people, let's say for example, intermittent fasting, sick, so they apply themselves to that, but then they put themselves into way too much of a calorie deficit and eat below. This is what I find very, very common, is that people eat below their BMR calories. So an example of this is, let's say that you probably know your weight, right? Work it out in pounds, and that's roughly how many calories your body requires to just be able to, well, keep metabolic function alive, and have enough energy to look after your organs, right? So it's like, do you see what I mean? People eat below that amount and then wonder why they're not losing weight in terms of whatever diet they're applying themselves to, yeah? So if you are under eating that much, understand that your body will down-regulate and adapt to what it perceives as average. Because, well, what will happen is that, yeah, you might drop some mad kgs initially, right? Because the body's like, whoa, shit, we've got a huge deficit of energy going on here. But because you went way too low, way too quickly, well, you can see here that even if you do that and apply it to intermittent fasting, you're gonna feel like shit. You're gonna feel hungry all the time, and you're gonna be like a ticking time bomb in terms of when you're gonna start having all these binges and just YOLOing on all the stuff that you've been cutting out, given that, well, to try and adhere to such a low calorie deficit, right, or intake of calories is ridiculous in terms of you trying to build a lifestyle around it, yeah? Now, there are some other reasons in terms of why a lot of people won't get results from doing intermittent fasting, but I find that those are the main three. If you have had experience with intermittent fasting and you didn't lose weight, I'd love to hear your experience with it in the comments below. But otherwise, let's shift into part 3, and we're going to uncover should you do it or not. So part 3, really hope you're enjoying the video so far. Do me a favor, comment below if you are at this stage of the video and you're loving the content. Let us know what you're valuing from it so far, and let's keep the conversation going, because that's why I love doing these sort of videos in terms of content-based ones, because I hate seeing people doing dumb shit that isn't going to help them to achieve their goals or unnecessarily making things hard. So part 3, let's look at whether it's something that you should actually do, right? So if I was to paint an ideal picture as to where someone should be at before they consider things like intermittent fasting, it would be as follows. So they've already got all their biomarkers down pat, meaning that they're on point with the sleep schedule, so they're getting in around 50 hours or so a week. They are doing very well in terms of managing stress, and because obviously if we think about the day-to-day at the moment, a lot of us have got so much shit on. We've got shit going on with work, shit going on with relationships, shit going on with all sorts of stuff, right? We are just so stressed these days, and when this is happening, the body perceives it to be under threat, and therefore if that happens too much, well, this is where it will fuck with things like your hormones and increase cortisol and reduce testosterone, amongst other things. It will fuck around with your appetite, and it just makes the whole aspect of even fat loss as a general nutshell very difficult, almost possible to achieve. I would want the person to be on point with their training. So in other words, they've got consistency with lifting probably about 3 or so times a week at least, moving daily in terms of 10,000 steps or so a day, stretching daily to be able to make sure that they don't have any mobility or tension issues in terms of muscle, lower back, shoulders, stuff like that. Like those sort of bases down packed, and that they have, let's say for example, maybe like I'd want to make sure that any sort of signs of binge eating and stuff like that have been worked on / eradicated, and that they have basically had a period of time of not eating in a deficit. So in other words, let's say that, well, for the average person, they spend the bulk of their adult life going in and out of a deficit. And by that I mean, well, one diet to the next, one shiny object syndrome, unicorn fucking tears, pill or product to the next, and just endlessly eating below BMR or just above, and then having these huge splurges of eating in a surplus, and therefore the body not having a clue what the fuck is going on. So just a period of time of just, well, restoring health, eating at maintenance. And cool, if all these things are sorted, well then they're going to be healthy. If we shift them into a deficit via applying themselves to intermittent fasting, well then fantastic. It should work. The body should adapt to it well in terms of taking it on, and well, that's when its perks can actually kick in terms of allowing your body to have a bit of time where it, well, just isn't fucking digesting food all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it can be good for the body to actually have those hours where it can just have a bit of a break from just having to break down and consistently metabolize food all the time. You see what I mean? But then also, like, I'd want to make sure that if the person, like, let's say their top priority is maintaining muscle, or not even maintaining muscle, like, well, yeah, if your goal is fat loss, you should be training and eating to maintain muscle. But let's say that you're bulking, right? If I were you, well, I wouldn't even be considering fasting at all, because like, you want to be getting in protein and calories spaced throughout your day, because otherwise what will happen is that, well, let's say that you're a chick, right? Like, you're not going to have much chance at gaining muscle if you're eating sub 2,500 calories. And if you're trying to get 2,500 calories within a very short time frame, unless you've got the appetite of the gods, you will struggle hard to hit your calories. And if you're a dude, well, you're probably going to be hitting closer to 3.5 or 4K, and yeah, like, it can be fucking hard to be able to hit that many calories in like a very short time frame. So it's like, you want to make sure that your health is on point first, basically, is the moral of the story, before you shift into a calorie deficit and putting yourself through intermittent fasting. Because keep in mind that it's like, you want to be building a lifestyle around the stuff that you're doing, right? Meaning that what you utilize and the strategies that you apply yourself to be able to get to a certain weight or to get to a certain body fat percentage or whatever, be aware that you're going to have to do similar stuff to be able to maintain what it is that you did. And by no means does that mean that you're going to have to, well, intermittent fast the whole entire fucking rest of your life, right? But it's like, you soon to understand that it's like, well, a calorie deficit is what triggers fat loss. Eating at maintenance calories, you can still utilize intermittent fasting, but then it's like your body will always be adapting to what it is that you're doing. So metabolism is always adaptive. All this sort of stuff is stuff that you should be aware of. But hopefully what this video has done is given you those ding light bulb moments in terms of understanding the science behind it, why a lot of people fuck up with it and it doesn't work for them. Because it's like, well, yeah, any diet, anything works, provided that you can adhere to the rules and the regulations or the sort of guidelines that it has you following to be able to, well, generate any sort of gains from it. All right, so if I were you, fuck restriction, fuck rules, adhere to what you enjoy, and then build a lifestyle out of it ongoing. So that's all I wanted to cover in this video. Please, if you have any more questions around it, drop a question in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going so I can add some more mad value to you. And if you want some specific help around these things, or to build a better relationship with food, I highly encourage you check out one of the links in the description. You can check out what my coaching is all about, or what you can actually do is you can get amongst a whole heap of free shit, as well as low-cost ebooks and stuff like that, to help you to master the game that is moderation, not deprivation, and essentially building a better relationship with food. This is stuff that you're going to see me model all throughout my own social media, so if you're keen to share in my own journey, you can click on one of the links below as well, and it will take you to my Facebook or to my Instagram, and you can be following me and seeing me model it in real time, because this is stuff that I live and breathe, and I love coaching people in to be able to master for themselves. So please, if you're a returning subscriber and you've watched it this far, would love it if you can give this video a like, and yeah, let me know what you found valuable from it. And obviously, if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen my videos before, hang around, stick around, check out some of the other videos in the uploads. You can see me eat, you can see some of my dope recipe videos and all sorts. But either way, really hope you got some value from this video. Peace out from Angus Beef. See you next time on the tubes. Take care.